8 hours on the road, 3 coffee stops, 2 full playlists, and a sore neck. That's what it took to get to my parents' house for our grand family reunion in Chicago. I parked the car, stretched out my back, and smiled thinking about the homemade food waiting for me. After all, I had left my Nashville apartment in the middle of the night for one reason: to be with family. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get more stories like this. But something felt off as soon as I stepped in. Voices in the dining room were already lively, with plates clinking and loud laughter. My parents, my sister Michelle, her husband, my cousins. For a few seconds, no one even noticed me arriving. "Oh, you're here," my mom finally said, not even getting up. We were almost done serving. I looked at the table. Every seat was taken. In one chair, a white poodle with a pink bow on its head was eating from a porcelain plate. "That's Cupcake," my sister Michelle explained while petting the dog. "He gets nervous if he doesn't eat with us." She didn't even look up. "Where should I sit?" I asked, still standing with my travel bag. My dad pointed to a plastic stool at the end of the table. "That spot's fine. It works." I glanced at the kid's stool, then at the dog eating chicken right where I used to sit. I smiled and said it wasn't a big deal. After all, what else could I do? The night went on, and I was assigned to sleep in the laundry room. "Michelle and Robert need the guest room, you understand?" my mom explained. "And Cupcake needs the space right next to their bed." I unfolded an air mattress between the washer and dryer and wished I'd just stayed at a hotel. At breakfast, Michelle asked me to go grab donuts from a bakery 40 minutes away. "You know that only Giuseppe's Donuts can soothe my anxiety," she argued. When I asked if I could use my card to pay because I was short on cash, she took offense. "After everything we do for you?" These kinds of scenes weren't new. My whole life, I was the kid who had to understand. At 16, I sold my first car to help Michelle pay for her graduation. At 22, I postponed college to help my folks cover the bills when Dad lost his job. At 27, I paid the down payment for Michelle's apartment while I lived in a tiny studio. "Family helps each other," my dad always said. Strangely, that help always seemed to flow in one direction. On the second day of the reunion, I got a bank notification on my cell. Someone had transferred $1,800 out of my account. Confused, I checked the details. Recipient: Michelle Silva. I found Michelle in the kitchen, fiddling with her phone and holding a glass of wine. "Michelle, did you just transfer money from my account?" She didn't even blink. "Oh yeah, I needed to pay for the reunion buffet. You always help with that." "But you didn't ask my permission." She laughed as if I'd just told a joke. "Since when do I need permission? We're family. Besides, you make more than I do." "How did you even get access to my account?" "Mom gave me your password. She's had it ever since you helped out with the mortgage." I felt my blood boil as everything fell into place. For years I had believed that small loans and favors were isolated emergencies. Now I realized it was a system. That night, I gathered the courage to bring it up at dinner. "I need the money returned," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. $800 is more than enough for my share of the buffet." An awkward silence fell over the table. My mom was the first to react. "Are you really going to make a fuss over money? At our family reunion?" Michelle rolled her eyes. "Always making a drama. That's why we prefer to handle things without checking with you." My dad cleared his throat. "Son, your sister has a lot of expenses. Cupcake needed special dental treatment last month. And you don't even have a family to support." "That money was meant for my rent," I explained, feeling a lump in my throat. "You always find a way," my mom replied, as she poured more wine. "Michelle needs it more. She's always been more sensitive." The conversation went on as if my problem was trivial. Later I overheard Michelle on the phone. "He's causing a scene over money again, as usual. So stingy." On the third night, lying amid piles of dirty laundry, I couldn't sleep. The washing machine dripped slowly, counting the seconds as I stared at the ceiling. I grabbed my phone and opened my banking app. I started adding up how much I'd loaned my family over the past 2 years. The number shocked me. $23,411. Money I could have used toward a down payment on my own place. For a postgrad. To live without stressing over bills. I remembered my therapist's words, who had gently suggested that my family dynamic was imbalanced. Back then, I defended my family. Now, her words made sense. Next door, I heard laughter. Michelle was watching a comedy show while I was stuck on a deflated air mattress. Downstairs, Cupcake was snoozing on a custom bed I had paid for last Christmas. Something broke inside me. It wasn't just about the money. It was about respect, about reciprocity, about being more than a walking ATM. That night, I made my decision. It would be the last time I let myself be treated this way. The last family reunion where my place was worth less than a dog's. The next morning, I left before anyone woke up. I drove to a 24-hour copy shop and spent 3 hours printing bank statements, receipts, and a detailed spreadsheet I had put together overnight. I organized everything in a blue folder and loaded a USB drive with scanned copies. I had never been so methodical, but something inside me had changed. I went back to my parents' house around noon. The family was in the living room, discussing plans for the afternoon barbecue. "Where have you been?" my mom asked in a tone that showed no real concern. "Michelle needs you to get some ice and charcoal." I took a deep breath, placed the blue folder on the coffee table, and stood there. "We need to talk," I announced with a firmness that surprised everyone, including myself. Cupcake barked, as if sensing that something had changed. "Not now, son. We've got guests coming in 2 hours." My dad tried to brush it off. "This can't wait." I opened the folder and pulled out the first page, a summary of the unreimbursed loans from the past 2 years. "Over the last 24 months, I transferred $23,411 to you. I never asked for repayment because I always believed it was for temporary emergencies." Michelle laughed nervously, glancing at our parents as if expecting them to cut me off. "Here he goes with his spreadsheets and numbers, always so dramatic." "It's not drama, Michelle. It's financial abuse." I handed each of them a copy of the summary. "Here's the breakdown. $4,700 for your specialization course that you never finished. $3,200 for that Cancun vacation you claimed was for Dad's medical treatment. $20,800 to renovate the guest room where, ironically, I can never sleep." My mom turned pale, dropping the paper on the floor. "How dare you throw our generosity in our face? We raised you, we educated you." "Yes, you raised me, and then decided that made me your early retirement plan." I pulled out another page. "Here's something interesting. In the last 5 years, I transferred to you 8 times more money than I put into my own retirement." Robert, Michelle's husband, looked genuinely uncomfortable. He'd never known where all that money came from. "You used my bank password without my permission. That's a crime." I pointed at the USB drive on the table. "I have all the transfers, dates, and records of unauthorized access. I also have screenshots of conversations where I asked for a refund and you refused." The room fell silent. Even Cupcake stopped barking. "Are you threatening your own family?" my dad finally asked, his voice trembling with indignation. "No, I'm setting boundaries. Boundaries that should have been in place a long time ago." I pulled my phone from my pocket and showed the banking app with a pending transfer. "I just requested an emergency refund of the $1,800 Michelle took without permission. The bank is already investigating." Michelle got up, clearly indignant. "Do you know what this will cause? I'm going to end up with a bad credit rating. How am I supposed to pay my bills?" "In the same way normal people do, with their own work and money." I closed the folder and tucked it under my arm. "For years I was treated like a walking ATM. I slept in the laundry room while Cupcake had his own bed in the guest room. I drove 8 hours just to sit on a kid's stool while a dog took my spot at the table." My mom started to cry, but I recognized those tears. They weren't of remorse, only manipulation. How many times had that crying made me back down, apologizing for demanding even a minimum of respect? "And there's more," I continued, feeling decades of frustration finally finding a voice. "The IRS would love to know about the gifts you received from me, unreported for tax purposes, especially those over $15,000 a year." "You wouldn't do that," my dad murmured, pale. "I wouldn't, provided you return the $1,800 and sign this document." I pulled a paper from the folder. "It's an acknowledgement of debt for the total of $23,411, with a 5-year repayment plan. No interest. Generous enough given the circumstances." The silence was broken by the sound of Cupcake drinking water from his custom bowl, a $150 item I had paid for last Christmas, while I wore worn-out sneakers to save money. "That's extortion," Michelle finally said. "You can't prove anything." I took one last document from the folder. "This is a formal complaint I prepared for the bank fraud department. It's all here. Dates, amounts, details on how you got my credentials without permission." I pulled a check from my pocket and placed it on the table. It was a $1 check made out to Familia Silva. "This is a symbolic payment for all the thanks I've ever received, for every time you recognized my sacrifices, for every moment you respected my boundaries." I pushed the check toward them. "It might seem like nothing, but it exactly equals the respect I got." Michelle took the check, her hands trembling. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life." I grabbed my suitcase, which I'd packed since early morning. "I'm leaving now. I'm not going to take this to court, but I expect the debt to be repaid. Not for me, but so you can sleep at night knowing you didn't steal your own son." "Are you really abandoning your family over money?" my mom screamed, now sobbing uncontrollably. "No. I'm freeing myself from a cycle of abuse over respect. Money is just a symptom." I walked to the door and turned back one last time. "Oh, and that story you always tell at reunions about how I had to sell my first car to invest in the stock market? The truth is, you used that money to pay for Michelle's graduation party. It would be nice if you stopped lying about it." As I closed the door, I heard the start of a heated argument among them. For the first time, it wasn't my job to fix things. For the first time, I felt the weight of years of guilt and obligation dissolve like mist in the morning sun. 3 days after the confrontation, the messages started coming in. The first came from Michelle on WhatsApp. "Are you really going to abandon us like this? Mom is beside herself with worry. Your selfishness knows no bounds." I didn't reply. An hour later, my dad called. When I didn't answer, he texted, "Son, I know you're upset, but family is forever. Michelle is facing some serious money issues right now. She might even lose the apartment because of you." I filed that message away. The next day, I received an email from Mom. "How can you treat us like this after everything we sacrificed for you? Your dad can't sleep thinking about what we did wrong to deserve such an ungrateful son." Every message felt like a hook trying to catch my guilt. In the past, I would have taken the bait, rushed back apologizing while emptying my wallet to fix everything. But something fundamental had changed inside me. On the 5th day, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Michelle's husband's aunt, a lawyer I barely knew. "Look, your parents asked me to talk to you about this delicate situation," she began, not really identifying herself properly. "I understand there are family resentments, but threatening to report them to the IRS is extremely serious." "I didn't threaten anyone," I replied calmly. "I simply mentioned that I have documentation of undeclared transfers." "That could be seen as blackmail," she tried to intimidate me. "Besides, you did sign off on several of those transfers voluntarily." "That's true. I signed the ones I authorized, not the ones made using my stolen credentials. And I have bank records proving the unauthorized access." There was an awkward silence. "Look," I continued, "I don't want any trouble. I just want to move on with my life. Tell them I won't file any report as long as they leave me alone." 2 weeks later, I received a desperate email from Michelle. The tone had completely shifted. "Please help me. I need $3,000 to cover rent this month. I know I've asked a lot before, but this time it's a real emergency. I promise to pay you back in 2 weeks. Attached was a photo of Cupcake with a sad expression and the caption, "Even Cupcake misses you, Uncle." The manipulation was so obvious I almost laughed. I saved the email in a folder I titled Evidence of Manipulation and went on with my day. A month later, the most surprising message arrived. A formal envelope with an apology letter signed by the entire family. It sounded sincere until the second-to-last paragraph, where they mentioned that, as part of this family healing process, they needed a temporary loan to cover urgent medical expenses. I scanned the letter and filed it along with all the other attempts. Every message, every missed call, every dramatic email only solidified my decision. They didn't miss me. They missed my money and my willingness to be used. After 6 weeks of emotional bombardment, I made a final decision. I changed my phone number, set up email filters to automatically file their messages, and informed my bank about the situation, beefing up the security on my account. It was like closing a chapter, a painful but necessary chapter. In the mirror, I now saw not just a man who had lost his family, but someone who had regained his dignity. And that, I realized, was worth far more than the $23,411 I'd probably never see again. 3 months after the confrontation, I moved to a new apartment. Smaller than my previous place, but completely mine. No outstanding debts, no unauthorized transfers draining my account. Every item there had been chosen by me for myself. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe without an invisible weight on my chest. In the first week, I got an unexpected call. It was my Aunt Nancy, my dad's sister, whom I had lost touch with years ago. "I heard what happened," she said bluntly. "Your dad called me with a pretty skewed version, saying you were having mental issues and had abandoned the family." "And you believed him?" I asked, bracing myself for another battle. "Not for a second." Her voice carried an understanding that caught me off guard. "I've known my brother for 55 years, and I've known Michelle since she was a baby. I know exactly how they are." Something inside me broke, not from sadness, but from relief. Finally, someone in the family understood. "I cut ties with them 8 years ago," Nancy continued, "after I refused to lend my savings for Michelle's 10th emergency. I worried about you all these years, but every time I tried to reach you, your mom said you were too busy. We talked for 2 hours that day. Nancy told me family stories I had never heard. How my dad manipulated the grandparents into bankruptcy. How my mom systematically isolated anyone who didn't feed her drama. You did what many of us never had the courage to do," she said at the end of the call. "You set clear boundaries." The following week, we met for lunch. Nancy had my dad's eyes, but there was genuine kindness in them. She brought an old photo album, baby me in her arms, me at 5 fishing with my uncle, moments that had been erased from the official family story. "They constantly rewrite the past," Nancy explained. "If you don't fit the current version, you're just edited out." That lunch was the first of many. Nancy became a constant presence, supportive rather than intrusive or demanding like my parents. A bridge to a less distorted past and a more honest future. At the same time, I started weekly therapy. Dr. Marcia helped me untangle decades of manipulation and guilt. "What you're feeling is called ambiguous loss," she explained during one particularly hard session. "You're grieving a family that physically exists, but was never emotionally there for you." The sessions revealed patterns that had haunted even my friendships and relationships. The tendency to put others' needs ahead of my own. Difficulty recognizing emotional abuse, and an almost automatic reflex to apologize for taking up space. "You were programmed to be a provider, not a person," Dr. Marcia observed. "Now you're learning to be both, in balance." Around the same time, I decided to pick up plans I'd put on hold. I enrolled in a specialization course I had postponed 3 times to cover family emergencies. I started contributing regularly to my retirement fund. Small acts of self-care that once felt selfish now proved essential. My weekends, once swallowed by exhausting family obligations, became mine. I explored city parks I had never visited. I tried dining out by myself, gradually watching the discomfort of eating alone turn into pleasure in my own company. I even adopted a cat from the local shelter, a pet I was never allowed to have because Michelle was allergic, a lie I discovered years later. 6 months after the breakup, I received an email from an old high school friend. We arranged a casual coffee that stretched into hours. Fernanda didn't ask about my family or pressure me for explanations. She simply shared her story and listened to what I chose to share. The contrast to my previous family interactions was so stark it almost hurt. In the following months, I built a small but genuine social circle. People who said no when they couldn't help, who didn't turn favors into never-ending debts, who celebrated my achievements without resentment. That's what healthy relationships are. Simple, yet revolutionary. One Sunday afternoon, while organizing my new home office, I found the blue folder with all the documentation from the confrontation. I leafed through pages of bank records, screenshots of manipulative chats, and the detailed spreadsheet of financial abuse. For a moment, The familiar wave of anger and hurt washed over me. Then, on impulse, I kept only the legal debt document, you never know, and shredded the rest. Those papers had done their job. They had set me free. I no longer needed to carry them as a constant reminder. That night, for the first time in years, I slept without jolts, without the anxiety of being woken up by a family emergency that would invariably involve my bank account. The silence of my apartment wasn't lonely anymore. It was serene. Almost a year after the confrontation, I received an unexpected message on LinkedIn. It was Heather, the wife of Michelle's brother. We'd never been close. She always seemed like a peripheral figure at family gatherings, quiet and resigned. "I hope you're doing well," the message began. I know it must be strange for me to reach out, but I needed to say thank you. Confused, I replied asking what exactly she was thanking me for. "For showing that it's possible to get out," she wrote. "After that reunion where you confronted everyone, something changed in me. I realized I wasn't the only one who saw the family's problems." Heather revealed that 3 months after my breakup, she had separated from her husband. The way he reacted to you leaving, laughing it off, calling you weak, was the tipping point. I realized I was married to someone as manipulative as the rest of the family. We set up a time for coffee. Heather looked different. Short hair, a more confident posture, a genuine smile. She said she'd gone back to school and moved into her own apartment. "You know what's even more ironic?" she commented. "Now that I've set boundaries, my relationship with my own parents has improved. They respect me more." We shared stories and laughed over absurd situations we once normalized. There was a real bond between us, survivors of the same family shipwreck. "Michelle spread horrible rumors about you," Heather confided. "She said you had a nervous breakdown, were involved with drugs, even that you threatened the family physically." I smiled, not at all surprised. It's the classic manipulation playbook. Discredit anyone who escapes. "The funny thing is, the more she badmouthed you, the more I questioned her version," she concluded. In the following weeks, Heather introduced me to an online support group for people who broke away from toxic families. There, I found dozens of stories similar to mine. Kids cast as providers, emotional scapegoats, or whipping boys. I began sharing my experience in the group. Before I knew it, I became something of a mentor to newcomers, helping others identify abusive patterns and set healthy boundaries. The pain I'd carried for so long now served as a beacon for others, lost in the same storm. At one of those virtual meetings, I met Carlos, who had cut ties with his parents after years of financial exploitation. Our friendship grew naturally, and eventually turned into something more. With him, I experienced for the first time a relationship without emotional games, without emotional blackmail, without disproportionate expectations. "It's weird," I said one night while we were having dinner. I spent years believing that love meant constant sacrifice, that it was only valuable if it wore me down for someone. "A toxic family teaches us that love is transactional," Carlos replied. It took me years to unlearn that. For my 30th birthday, I organized a small celebration. There were Aunt Nancy, a few friends from work, Heather, Carlos, and folks from the support group. A chosen family built on mutual respect and genuine affection. During the party, I got an email notification. It was from Michelle, the first contact in months. "Happy birthday. I hope you reconsider your choices and come back to the family that really loves you. We miss you. Especially when we need help with the bills. Haha." That, haha, trying to cover up the harsh reality made me feel not anger but pity. I showed the message to Nancy. "They will never change," she sighed. "But you have changed, and that's what matters." I looked around the room, people talking, laughing, connecting without ulterior motives or hidden agendas. People who were there not for what I could do for them, but for who we were together. I deleted the email without replying and joined my guests. The past might keep trying to pull me back, but now I was firmly anchored in the present. A present built on awareness, deliberate choices, and above all, self-love. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to get more stories like this. That night before going to sleep, I reflected on the journey of the past year. I had lost a biological family but found a community. I had lost $23,411, but gained something far more valuable. my emotional and financial freedom. I had lost my place at the table where a dog was more valued than me. But I found my place in the world. And for the first time, that place was exactly where I wanted to be.